welcome to Moving Panels One Shot. Let's have a short little nerdy conversation. Joining me today is the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. Please welcome back podcast favorite, Mr. Tim Williams.
Oh, thanks for having me, Laramy. It's good to be back.
It is always a pleasure to have you and to kind of talk about anything movie related, as you are, in my opinion, a movie expert.
Oh no, please don't do that.
Well, today we are going to discuss whether or not there have been superheroes or supervillains, we'll hit a couple of those, who have been played by someone better than the actor who initially played the part. Now, this is actually going to be kind of fun because I'm sure several people, Tim probably even included, and several of the listeners, may not realize that what they think is the first person to play the character is not actually the first person. Best example is Christopher Reeve. Although Christopher Reeve is famously known as Superman, and he is the best Superman, so we're not going to be talking about him in this episode. He was not the first. He was actually the third actor to portray Superman. So there's a lot of these characters that people may not realize have been played by more than one person or more than two or three people. There may have been somebody else. So this is mainly going to focus on not only those characters, but characters that aren't the major, been played by people time and time again. For instance, Batman. We've already done a best Batman. Go back and listen to it. It was a great episode with Blake Fowler where we decided who the best Batman was. We're looking at the ones that have only been played by a few people. So that's what we're going to discuss. So we're not discussing Batman. Already been done. Go into the archives and listen to it. We're not going to talk about Superman or Spider-Man or the Joker even, because in my opinion, those deserve their own episodes. Even though Spider-Man's only been played by like 3 or 4 guys, they're still big enough and it's enough of a debate that I think those deserve their own episode.
Right.
We're also not going to hit animated voices because that just starts to bog this down a lot, because a lot of different animated things out there with different voices. So we're only going to focus on people who have actually worn the costume, played the character in a movie or television show.
Gotcha.
All right. So I'll let you kind of hit it first. Is there anybody that came to mind when we originally talked about doing this episode?
That the original was better than the person that came after them?
Or either or.
Okay, I will answer that. My first answer is no, I can't think of anyone that the original is better than someone that came after them. So the first one that I thought of, and I guess is going back to an 80s kid because I'm an 80s flick flashback. I'm thinking about 80s. But let's talk about the Incredible Hulk. So I was introduced to the Incredible Hulk through the TV show with Bill Bixby. I grew up watching that show. That was the only Hulk that I knew. Then you had some really bad versions of the Hulk that came out not so long ago when Marvel was or before Marvel really got going. You had the Ang Lee Hulk movie with Eric Bana, which was not very good at all. I did not enjoy that movie at all. The Incredible Hulk with Ed Norton, that was kind of the beginning of the MCU when they were still trying to figure out if it was going to be a full-on story, if it was a connected story with Iron Man or not. And that movie isn't as bad. I actually enjoy that movie. I don't feel like it fits very well in the MCU overarching story, but I do enjoy Mark Ruffalo a lot as both Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk. So he by far would be my favorite Hulk, even though the nostalgia part of me loves Bill Bixby, but it's two totally different takes on the character. But I think Ruffalo's going to take for me on that one.
Well, you keep saying Bill Bixby. So are you focusing just on even though Bill Bixby's was David Banner, are you focusing on the Banner character? Because in terms of the Hulk, it was Lou Ferrigno.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that. Yeah, you're right. Lou Ferrigno was actually the Hulk, not Banner. So, and he was David Banner in the TV show, right?
Yes.
I think you correct. Yes. And I should have remembered that because my wife and I started watching the TV show again like a year or so ago. We didn't get very far, but well, it's kind of hard to compare those two because you have a totally different person playing the Hulk, whereas the other because Ang Lee actually played the Hulk. He did all the animation or the stop motion, or what do you call it, the CGI. He modeled the Hulk for his movie. He kind of played the Hulk in that version. I'm not
And
sure about.
you could almost argue that with Edward Norton too, because Lou Ferrigno actually did do a lot of the work for the Hulk in that movie.
No, see, I didn't know that. So, yeah. All right, let's move on to something else.
Yeah, no, I'm in a similar boat. I grew up watching The Incredible Hulk in reruns on television, and so that was The Incredible Hulk for me.
Right.
But I do agree. I think that Mark Ruffalo's version from the Avengers and the sequels, although Professor Hulk, I'm not 100% on. I
Gotcha.
kind of like the duality of the Hulk. It's the
Yeah.
thing I like about him, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of in the boat with you. I do have the nostalgia for Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno, but ultimately I agree. I think that Edward Norton and then that Hulk, whatever little Lou Ferrigno even did on it, but Edward Norton and that Hulk and then Mark Ruffalo into the Hulk, I think it's a better Hulk. It's more true to the comic,
Right.
and not just in style, but in look. And so I agree. I think that as great as Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno are, they fall in that same boat as a lot of this whole episode's going to be about, is that first person. And they were the first. Does the nostalgia overpower the actual technicality and aesthetics of what they can do nowadays with
Right.
CGI? And the Hulk is a great example of that. And so aside from all of that, taking out all of the CGI and all, I do think that Mark Ruffalo is a better Bruce Banner than any of the previous, including Bill Bixby. I think Bill Bixby's Banner was just he was kind of a jerk a lot of times. He was just kind of like, oh, woe is me. The whole lonely man thing that they really emphasized in that show. Eric Bana's Bruce Banner just didn't work, didn't make sense. Edward Norton was good, but he just didn't bring that, to me, the intelligence that Bruce Banner should have. And I think Mark Ruffalo balances it perfectly. So in terms of a Bruce Banner, Mark Ruffalo is the best. Hulk, there's a lot of argument there because Lou Ferrigno is really the only person to actually be the Hulk, because all the rest of them are completely CGI.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I'll give you that one.
All right, so I'll move on to, we were talking about the Hulk. Well, there is a character that actually appeared in one of the Hulk TV movies that people didn't realize, and that's Thor.
Oh, yeah.
So most people think that Chris Hemsworth is the first person to live action play Thor. That is not true. He appeared in the trial of the Incredible Hulk TV movie with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno, and he was played by Eric Allen Kramer. If you're not familiar with that name, younger listeners might know him as he was the dad from Disney's Good Luck Charlie. And for people who are closer to me and Tim's age, will know that he was Little John in Mel Brooks's Robin Hood Men in Tights. So he was actually the original Thor. It was a television movie, but he did play Thor. And then, of course, now we have Chris Hemsworth. So this is another argument that, even though people don't realize it, yes, Chris Hemsworth's a better Thor.
Yeah. Now, I want to put a little pin there because this may be a technicality, but if you ever saw the 80s movie, because I'm from the 80s quick flashback, this is working well for me. There's a movie called Adventures in Babysitting that came out in the 80s. And Vincent D'Onofrio actually he owns a garage, and one of the movie, she's obsessed with Thor and the character of Thor, and when she sees him, she thinks he's Thor. And if you watch that movie, he kind of says he is, even though I know he was just kind of playing with a girl. But
yeah,
I would have paid money back then to see Vincent D'Onofrio play Thor, and I'm sure he would have been a better Thor, or he would have given Hemsworth a run for his money.
I don't know about that, but yeah, no, he wasn't Thor. I didn't even think about that scene until you started bringing it up. But no, he wasn't Thor. Now, the thing about Eric Allen Kramer's version of Thor is what I do like about it, even though it was only for this one TV movie, is he played the part as just the, I'm the Norse god who knows nothing about, the human world, which they kind of play off with a little bit in the first Thor movie with Chris Hemsworth.
Right.
But I think overall, in terms of being heroic, in terms of being just the mighty Thor,
yeah,
Chris Hemsworth definitely has owned that character, is playing that character better, and I don't know if I see anyone being able to do it the way Chris Hemsworth has been able to pull it off.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll even say, because like I said, I've gone back and started watching the MCU movies from the beginning. I just wanted to go back and watch them, and I just recently watched the first Thor again, and I was amazed at how much better Hemsworth has gotten in that role. Like, I think he was good in the original Thor, but you can see his progression of that character has gotten stronger with each movie. I think most of them were like that, but it really stood out to me then to go back and watch the first Thor after seeing him in Ragnarok and, of course, Infinity War and Endgame and Fat Thor and all that kind of stuff. But I saw his growth in that character and really developing that character even more so. So I appreciated his performance even more going back and watching it again. So I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Because that is the thing with some of these who have played the character before. We just talked about the Hulk. Eric Bana only got to play him once. Edward Norton only got to play him once. So it's the fact that they did get to play the character more and to get to develop the character a little bit more. I do want to correct myself. I had to look it up while you were talking because I was pretty sure I was wrong. So Kramer's Thor was not in the Trial of the Incredible Hulk. Okay. It was in The Incredible Hulk Returns.
Gotcha.
Trial of the Incredible Hulk, however, did introduce us to another character we can talk about. Because Trial of the Incredible Hulk, in which David Banner and the Hulk, Banner, I should say, Banner witnesses a crime and has to take the stand. Mm-hmm. And the lawyer who is doing all of that is Matt Murdock, a.k.a. Daredevil. And so we have had 3 actors play Daredevil. The one who plays him in this television movie was Rex Smith. Rex Smith hasn't really done an awful lot. He's actually a Broadway actor, but in terms of TV and movies, there's probably not anything people know him from. Of course, first time in the cinematic movies was Ben Affleck back in, 2003 with the Daredevil movie, and then most recently in the Netflix series played by Charlie Cox. I am a huge fan of the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, and it goes to that nostalgia again. Not that I grew up with him. I mean, I was, in college when the Daredevil movie came out, but Daredevil was, people who've listened to this podcast before has heard me say this, Daredevil was my first comic I ever read. And so Daredevil has this special place in my heart that I love that character. And so the Ben Affleck movie brought that character to life for me. Mm-hmm. And so I really enjoyed the Ben Affleck movie. I'm not going to deny it's not a good movie as a whole. It's cheesy, but I like the Ben Affleck movie. Charlie Cox, though, is a better Daredevil.
Yeah. All right, so I don't ever remember watching the Trial of the Incredible Hulk, so I can't speak to that Thor. I did see the Daredevil movie. I remember going to the theater and seeing it. I can't say it's as terrible as people put it, but it has not stood the test of time for me, where it's not one that I go back and watch. Like, I'm sure I haven't watched it it came out in 2003, probably since 2005, maybe 2006. I probably watched it again when it was on cable or something like that. So it came on TV. So I don't have a lot of recollection of that, but I really enjoyed the Charlie Cox Netflix show. But once again, I think it goes back to ability to develop the character. One of the positives of the TV show was you weren't trying to cram an origin story into a hour and 45 to 2 hour movie. You had time to kind of tell that story through the process of a TV show. So I agree. I think Charlie Cox was better, but I'd have to go back and watch the Ben Affleck Daredevil to speak more on it.
Well, and you said you haven't seen Trial of the Incredible Hulk. Rex Smith's Daredevil also never, I don't know if it was intentional, but he never wore the red suit.
Okay.
his Daredevil was very reminiscent of the early Daredevil that Charlie Cox played, where he just had like the black, kind of looked like a cat burglar.
Right.
You know, all black clothes and then a black bandana covering his eyes and head. And that was really what Daredevil looked like in that. So again, he didn't really get the chance to develop it. It was intended to be a launching point to do a spinoff and actually have a Daredevil television show.
Okay.
Because in that movie, not only did they introduce Daredevil, but they also introduced Kingpin.
Okay.
Who was played by John Rhys Davies. I think his last name's pronounced Davies.
Right. Yeah,
that,
you're right.
People would know from the show Sliders or the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So we're also looking at, for each one of these Daredevil incarnations, we also have a Kingpin in each one. So we could even get into an argument, I don't think we need to, but we could get into an argument about who's played the Kingpin better.
Right.
So we've had that, but I agree. Charlie Cox had the ability to develop the character more. He's played him more, and we got to see it unfold more. And so, yes, he has played Daredevil better. Now, unless you have something more to say about Daredevil, I kind of want to flip-flop that with my next character.
Go for it.
So, Wonder Woman.
2
amazing actresses have played Wonder Woman. There's actually been 3, but I don't recognize the first Wonder Woman. Linda Carter was the first woman to play Wonder Woman.
Right.
And of course, there was 3 seasons of a television show. So she had the ability to play out the character. But now we have Gal Gadot, who has played Wonder Woman 3 times in the movies. About to be 4, or actually already 4, because Wonder Woman 1984 has come out. So we've got Linda Carter, and now we have Gal Gadot. This one I'm going to need your help with, because I'm torn.
I was going to say, this is a tough one, and I'm surprised I didn't think about this one initially, because this is by far this is my wife's all-time favorite superhero. She's a huge Wonder Woman fan, and that's tough because the nostalgic side of me is going to want to go with Linda Carter for good reason, but Gal Gadot has really taken on that role, and I can't. You're right. When you think of Wonder Woman, you're only going to think of those 2 women. And I don't know if you can put one above the other. And I know, especially in the latest film, Wonder Woman 84, there's a lot of homage paid to the TV show and Linda Carter's incarnation of that. So it's kind of hard to even put one above the other, because I think, and if you've ever seen them, they did an interview during the DC did their little fandom, and the love and appreciation they both had towards each other. It's hard. It's tough.
No, I'm right there with you. I think that is the one superhero character in which I can't decide. Linda Carter and Gal Gadot are both Wonder Woman.
And that's going to be a problem for our generation. Like the younger generation that doesn't know the Linda Carter one, they're going to, they've seen Gal's incarnation of it. And if they go back and watch Linda Carter, they're going to say, oh, well, Gal's so much better. But they're basing that off of new technology and, basing the old show effects and writing and stuff like that. But as far as embodying
portrayal of the character,
it's tough to put one above the other. So I think we can both agree that's a draw on that one. And have to, and I'm happy with that. I don't feel like I'm sliding either one of them by saying that they're equal in my eyes.
Well, so now I want to switch to another one that most people don't know, so we're just going to make this one quick. Okay. Benedict Cumberbatch is not the first guy to play Doctor Strange. There was a Doctor Strange TV movie in which an actor by the name of Peter Hooton played Doctor Strange. Mm-hmm. If you ever get the chance to go back and watch it, I'd love to do an episode about it one day, but that is a horrible movie. He is a horrible Doctor Strange. So Benedict Cumberbatch, of course, is the best Doctor Strange, period. Moving on.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue with you because Cumberbatch is the only Doctor Strange I've ever seen. So, and since you've given the other movies such high marks, I'm never going to watch it. No, just kidding.
All right, let's get into a group. What about the Fantastic Four?
Who? See, this is tough because
they've all been bad. That's why.
They've all been bad. but there are, yeah, I don't know. That one's tough. There are certain actors from both that I liked, but as a group, neither one has been great.
Yeah, so that's what I think we could break this down to.
Yeah.
Is there an individual who has stuck out in the Fantastic Four? Because definitely as a group, they have not worked.
Right.
There has been, for people who don't know, there have been 3 incarnations. There's, of course, the infamous most recent one with Miles Teller, Kate Mara, Michael B. Jordan, and Jamie Bell.
Right.
There were the 2 movies from the early 2000s with, I have no idea how to pronounce his name, Iowan Grufford.
Right.
Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, and Michael Chiklis. But then some people don't know that there was the 90s version, which there's a great documentary about that Fantastic Four called Doomed that I highly recommend, in which they were played by unknown actors. I mean, I know who they are. Alex Hyde White, Rebecca Staub, Jay Underwood, and Michael Bailey Smith. Of course, none of them are going to be on the list of playing it better, even though our argument is, has anyone played it better than the first? The answer to that question is yes. But is there anyone that we would say is that character?
Well, it's hard for me to answer that because I didn't read the comics, so I don't know what's truer to the real comic version of the character. I enjoyed the first Fantastic Four from the early 2000s. The second one, Silver Surfer, I did not care for at all. Mm-hmm. And even the newer one that came out a couple years ago, as you mentioned, with Michael B. Jordan and Kate Mara, I enjoyed probably the first half of that, and I appreciated where it was
most
going,
definitely.
But it just totally fell apart on the back half.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. The main characters that I can think of that I would say I can compare was Chris Evans or Michael B. Jordan the better? Was it Johnny Blaze?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, not Johnny Blaze. Johnny Storm. Johnny Blaze is Ghost Rider.
Yeah, I knew I was getting her mixed up. So which one was the better Johnny Storm? And that's kind of tough for me because I love both of them as actors. And they were in both films, they were the only character that I really cared about.
Yeah.
Or that I got drawn to. So,
but again, you're getting into, and I agree with you, they're amazing actors, but did that necessarily make them a good Human Torch?
Yeah, and I can't answer that question.
Yeah, I think if I were to say anything about any of the Fantastic Four movies, I think that Ian, however you pronounce his name, Grufford,
right.
I liked him as Mr. Fantastic. I thought he was a good Mr. Fantastic. I could see him continuing as Mr. Fantastic. I walk a thin line, like you were with the Michael B. Jordan and Chris Evans. I walk a thin line with Michael Chiklis for The Thing. I liked his performance as The Thing. Mm-hmm. I don't think the suit that they put him in, the prosthetics and all, I don't think that really worked. I kind of like the idea of making him completely CGI like they do with the Hulk and as they did with Jamie Bell in the more recent movie. But I do think if I were to pick out of the group, I think they kind of have established the character well, although I'm ready for anybody to do better.
Yeah. Now I will say I think Dr. Doom in the first set in the early 2000s, Fantastic Four was way better. Yeah, was way better than the second. So that newer Fantastic Four movie and the portrayal of Dr. Doom, who was played by Toby Kebbell, whenever I get around to doing that as a full episode, I have so much to say about that. Yeah, I did want to give him props because I thought his portrayal of Dr. Doom I really liked. I thought he was a great villain in the first Fantastic Four film. Yeah, I don't think Dr. Doom has been portrayed well in any of the movies. Gotcha. But once again, I wasn't an avid Fantastic Four comic reader, so I'm just going back. That's because of my first incarnation of him, so. All right, so there are other characters we could discuss. Captain America, Catwoman, and of course, like I talked about, Spider-Man. But those probably could go a little bit deeper. We could probably do episodes just on those.
And, kind of go from there. Two-Face, I don't really like to get into the Batman villains because not only have they very rarely been played by the same character more than once, but there's so many of them, and they just get played here and there and everywhere. And again, whole another episode we could probably just do on Batman villains. So we'll kind of wrap it up there. So ultimately, I think we're both in agreement that none of the first actors have ever been the best.
Right. I agree.
I think it's always gotten improved upon, whether it's been, as we've said, from a television series that has allowed the actor to go deeper into the character, whether it's from playing them multiple times in a movie. We agree that the first person, although might give us some nostalgia like Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno did, it's always improved upon. I do think that those people establish something and they give something for the next person to work off of, but ultimately someone betters the part. This isn't a James Bond aspect where almost everybody's in agreement Sean Connery is the best James Bond. And of course he was the first. But I think the only one we agreed on that was probably never improved on, but we also didn't say she was better, was Linda Carter. We didn't say that Gal Gadot plays her better. We just said it was tied. So that's kind of where we ended up.
Yep.
So there you have it. Something for you to consider. Thank you, Tim. Do you want to let people know about your show?
Yes. I host the show called the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast, where myself and a guest co-host, which Laramy's been a recurring guest co-host, always enjoy having him on the show. Where we will watch an 80s movie, a movie that we either saw in the theater, discovered on cable TV, or rented as a younger person. We were kids, or Laramy, he wasn't even born yet. But
I worked at Blockbuster, thank you very much.
But we'll rewatch an 80s movie, some great, some not so great, and we discuss some, talk about our first experiences watching them, and kind of go through how they were made and learn some behind the scenes stories along the way. We always have a lot of fun, and we'd love for you to check us out. The 80s Flick Flashback Podcast can be found on great podcasting sites like Apple Podcast, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and other great fine podcast platforms.
And it is a exciting show to listen to find out. Tim does some great research to give you some facts and some trivia and some information about the shows. And the guest host always just comes in as a big fan of whatever movie typically they're talking about. So it's a great listen. And so you should definitely give it a listen.
Yeah, and Laramy is a reader. So if I ever do a movie adaptation of a book, I know Laramy's probably read it. And so he always gives good insights about the book as well.
Yeah, right along with those comic books, I do like to read other things as well. So thank you, Tim. Please leave us a positive review on Apple Podcast. Like, subscribe, follow us on your favorite podcasting platform, and follow us on social media. We are at Moving Panels on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And if you have thoughts that you'd like to share directly with us, or you want to suggest a topic for the show, you can email us at movingpanels@gmail.com. Thank you again, Tim, for joining me, and I look forward to another great conversation down the road. But for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Hello, movie viewers and fellow movie lovers. My name is Tim Williams, and I'm the creator and host of Movie Views Presents the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. See, I love the 80s, and I have a great appreciation and nostalgic passion for the classic 80s flicks that birthed my love for movies and ultimately helped shape my childhood. On each episode, I'll discuss, with a special guest co-host of course, a different film from the 1980s. We'll share memories, favorite characters, iconic scenes, and even share some behind-the-scenes stories along the way. We'll discuss famous blockbusters like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Coming to America, Ghostbusters, Dirty Dancing, Top Gun, Die Hard, and many, many more. As well as some other cult classics and even lesser-known flicks we discovered on cable TV or the now-defunct video rental stores. Remember those? No matter what 80s flick we choose to talk about, we'll always have a good time, so come and check us out. You can find the 80s Flick Flashback podcast on major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and more. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss a single episode. Once again, I'm Tim Williams, and I hope you'll join me for the next 80s Flick Flashback.